Hi, welcome to my astrology channel. Today I want to talk about a subject that again I have been thinking about for a pretty long time, and it has to do with the partner archetype in the natal chart. And before I get into it, if you're new to my channel, please subscribe and give a thumbs up if you like the video and hit the notifications bell. And also, if you're interested in a personal consultation, please email me at the email that I will leave in the video description. Okay, thank you. And so let me get into it. The partner archetype and relation to the age of the spouse that you will have. Why is this important, first of all? You may think that, this is a pretty shallow subject. Like, why would you care if... First of all, why would you care about age in general? I know people like to throw that around, like, hey, age is just a number, and why would you care about somebody's age, and why would you dismiss somebody when it comes to dating just based on their age, and blah, blah, blah. Obviously, there are differences between men and women, and typically, it is somewhat more acceptable for men to go for younger women, but not as acceptable for women to go for older men. Well, yeah, this is why I love astrology. Because there are so many things that you will see in the natal chart of a person, so many things in astrology that explain things that nothing else in life will explain. And this is exactly why I think a lot of people should start learning astrology. It's because you have to understand that every person is meant to be attracted to certain individuals. And this is also helping to understand why sometimes you just don't click with some people. And this is also helping in understanding why some people are not going to find you attractive, okay? No matter what you do, and you shouldn't take it personally. You shouldn't be like, oh my god, I'm such a failure because this person doesn't find me attractive. No, it doesn't mean that there's anything wrong with you. It just means that you don't match what they are subconsciously looking for. Because if you go back to the idea that astrology goes hand in hand with the the idea of reincarnation, then you start to understand that each person is meant to be attracted to a certain archetype for a reason, okay? And again, it has nothing to do with whether a partner is good enough or not, because there is no objective criteria to determine if a person is good, okay? Aside from, the usual things, criteria, which are, determined by biology and stuff, like women want financial security in a man. That's generally universally true. But, some women will be more influenced by that than others, and I was considering doing a video about this as well in the future, and I probably will, I don't know when, namely to discuss the phenomena of gold diggers. But I won't get into that now. That's a totally different subject. But there's so much you can see in a person's natal chart with regards to why they are attracted to a certain archetype and what archetype they are attracted to. And this is so helpful, and I've seen it when interpreting, people's charts and requests that I've had to look into relationship synastry. And so many times you see people being interested in a person, and then when you look at that person's chart, you can clearly see that this person is not going to like them back. Because if let's say, let's say you're a man and you want to date a woman who's 10 years younger than you, and maybe in your chart you have aspects that show you're going to be attracted to younger women. But in her chart, she has aspects that say she's going to be attracted to younger men. So basically, you're wasting your time. And here's the thing. If you're somebody who is, you don't know anything about astrology and you don't accept the fact that, we're attracted to different archetypes, you're going to probably take this very personal. Sometimes even hateful. Men will say things like, "Oh my God, what a stuck-up bitch." She won't even consider dating a guy who is 10 years older than her, and she's already in her 30s. And they take it really personally, and they start to blab about, feminism and all that and all this, instead of understanding the fact that, hey, this woman just isn't into that kind of a man, okay? Everybody is attracted to a certain archetype for a reason, okay? Because this is what your soul wanted to experience when you got here. Okay, so, and I've seen this, another parenthesis, you can probably tell this is going to be a long video. Another parenthesis is the fact that I remember analyzing this chart for, this woman who was attracted to a guy who was like 3 years younger than her. And this guy, in his chart, he had so many aspects that showed that he was attracted to younger women. And it kind of hurt me, but I had to tell her, I don't want to lie to people. And I was like, hey, this guy is probably not gonna consider you seriously as a prospective, romantic partner or date, because he's attracted to younger women. That's the way it is. And it will save so much time and so much heartache if people knew this. And I'm not trying to say, if you see this aspect, again, it's not 100% set in stone, and I will get into more details further into the video. But it's not 100% set in stone. Obviously, people do have free will, and it depends on life experience as well. It could be that, I don't know, based on life experiences, or at some point in life, you will overcome. Or maybe you have already experienced what your chart is showing, and now you want to try something else. Or you're going through a transit of sorts that show, you're going to be attracted to something different than what your natal chart is predicting. However, you're going to see this when I get into the video. If you look at certain points in the natal chart, you can, I would say, to an 80% degree accuracy, predict if a person is going to be attracted to younger people or older people. Or, if there are people within the same age range, give or take a few years, So, let me get into it. The aspects and placements in the natal chart that show whether you like older or younger people. So, as you may have considered, maybe not, the planet that shows older people in general in astrology is Saturn. Saturn shows, maturity, it shows old age, life experience. It also shows things that last in general, so durability, things that stand the test of time. So when you see Saturn involved with the aspects and placements that have to do with the spouse archetype in somebody's chart, that's when you see a person who's going to be drawn to older people. And I will get into each of those as we progress. And on the opposite side of the spectrum, you have Mercury. Mercury represents young people. It represents youthfulness, playfulness, a kind of a Peter Pan sort of energy, evergreen, young, curious, talkative, sociable, social butterfly sort of thing. Remember that Mercury actually corresponds to the age range of somewhere starting with a prepubescent child and ending at around the age of maybe 14, 15. So it's this really youthful kind of energy. And conversely, if you see a person who has a lot of Mercury influence on their spousal planets and points, their partner planets and points in the natal chart, you're going to see somebody who is attracted to younger partners. All the other planets and points, and remember that in Vedic astrology, you ignore the so-called generational planets. So there is no Uranus, Neptune, Pluto, and all the other asteroids. You ignore all of those.
So you all have, like, the other planets are Sun, Moon, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, and Rockaway and Ketu, but those are not really planets. And they're, well, I'll get into details further on, but these planets and points, they don't really show younger or older. They show about the same age range, or they're kind of neutral when it comes to age in general. So if you see these, like, aspecting the partner planets in the chart, you can't say anything about whether they're going to like younger or older partners. So let's get into it. I have made a list in the order of importance from what I have noticed of planets that you want to look at when you want to determine
the age of the spouse, or the age that you are most likely to be attracted to in a potential partner. Number one, the most important planet is the Darakaraka. I have made another video about this, and maybe I'll link it in the video description. The Darakaraka, I've made like a short list, a short description of Darakaraka through each sign in this other video I made about the spouse archetype in the natal chart. So the Darakaraka, in short, is the planet with the lowest degree. And it is, in Vedic astrology, said to show the spouse. It is the opposite of the Atmakaraka, and you may have heard of that in other videos, which is your soul's purpose in this life, in this incarnation. And the Darakaraka can be any of the 7 planets except for Rahu and Ketu. So when the Darakaraka is Saturn, or when it is conjunct Saturn, it is very likely that you're going to be attracted to older people. The spouse archetype is going to be somebody who is, sometimes it could be that you're not necessarily looking for someone who's physically older, but you want somebody who is going to embody the Saturn traits, and it's really difficult to find somebody who's young who's going to embody the Saturn traits, because you want somebody who is stable, serious, mature, organized, sometimes career-oriented or professional, serious about their responsibilities and their role in society and all that stuff. Conversely, if you have Darakaraka being Mercury or conjunct Mercury, your Darakaraka, maybe your Darakaraka is Sun, but it's conjunct Mercury, that's equally telling, equally important, and it weighs just as much as Mercury being your Darakaraka. Again, you're going to be attracted to younger people. You're going to want somebody who's a Mercury archetype. Somebody who's youthful and talkative and playful and witty and smart and curious and all the stuff that Mercury represents. And so, yeah, the Darakaraka is the most important. I made a list, okay, so I'm just going to go through the list. So, it's a total of, let's say, 6. I would say 6 different things that you have to look at in the natal chart to determine whether you're gonna like, or the person you're interested in is gonna like older or younger partners. So first of all, you have Darakaraka. Aspects, you have to look at Darakaraka, the ruler of the Darakaraka, so depending on which sign the Darakaraka sits in, it will have different rulers. Again, if the ruler of the Darakaraka is Mercury, so if Darakaraka sits in Gemini or in Virgo, again, that would show a younger spouse. You want to be with a younger partner. But if Darakaraka is in Capricorn or in Saturn or in Aquarius, it will be ruled by Saturn, so you're going to be attracted to older spouses. The second most important, from what I have noticed, is remember Mars, Jupiter in the woman's chart, and I've mentioned this in plenty of other videos as well. Mars and Jupiter in the woman's chart represent the partner archetype, the kind of man that she is attracted to. Mars represents the boyfriend, quote unquote, meaning the kind of man that she fantasizes about and is physically attracted to and is going to make her feel passionate and all that stuff and physically attracted, whereas Jupiter is going to be the husband archetype, the kind of man that she wants when it comes to long-term partnerships and children and all that stuff. Conversely, the equivalent of this would be Venus for men. So Venus is the wife in a man's chart, or the girlfriend. Basically, nowadays, when you say wife, it's like, long-term partner. So these two, you have to look at these two, whether they are in, either they are governed by Saturn, again, if they fall in Capricorn or Aquarius, and that's going to show somebody who's attracted to older partners. If they fall into Virgo or Gemini, they will be attracted to younger partners. Again, if they're aspected by Mercury or by Saturn, all of these things, okay? So any influences from Mercury or Saturn will either show younger or older partner. The third most important ruler of the 7th house, okay, or the descendant, as it is called in the Western tropical astrology. So again, descendant in Gemini or Virgo will show that you're drawn to younger partners. Descendant in Capricorn or Saturn is going to show that you're drawn to older partners. It will also show a delay in marriage and all things related to romance, but I won't get into that. This is not about that. It's only about the kind of partner that you are attracted to. So let's see. So ruler of the 7th house. Then we have planets in the 7th house. If you have Saturn in the 7th house, very strong placement for somebody who wants older partners. If you have Mercury in the 7th house, very strong placement for somebody who wants younger partners. Okay. Let's see. The 5th most important aspect, the one that I wrote down here, is planets aspecting the 7th house. So remember, Saturn, according to Vedic astrology, makes 4 different kinds of aspects. It aspects the 1st house from itself, which is the conjunction. The 3rd house from itself, which is a placement where that you're going to put a lot of effort in to the area that is the 3rd from your Saturn. So it aspects the 3rd from itself, the 7th from itself, which is the opposition, or the 10th from itself, which is something to do with the career. Well, each of these are kind of like nuanced, but any of these aspects mean that you are, that area is going to be influenced by Saturn. And these aspects, remember, in Vedic astrology pretty much only depend on the sign placement or the house placement, because when you read in Vedic astrology, you use sidereal zodiac together with the whole sign house system. So if your ascendant is in Aries, that means the whole of the 1st house is in Aries, for instance. So if you have like Saturn in the 1st house, it will aspect the 3rd house, right? The 3rd placement from itself. So any planet which is in the 3rd sign from Aries, which is, let me think, Aries, Taurus, Gemini, right? So any planet that is in Gemini is going to be aspected by Saturn, just to give you an example. Same thing with 7th or 10th from itself. You have to count what is the 7th and the 10th house from that sign to see what are the planets and the points that are aspected by Saturn. And with Mercury, it only makes 2 kinds of aspects, the conjunction or the opposition, which is the 1st or the 7th placement from itself. So planets aspecting the 7th house. So either Mercury aspects the 7th house, that basically means Mercury in the 1st house. So if you have Mercury in the 1st house, that will also to some extent show that you want younger partners, but it's not as strong as having Mercury in the 7th or having the 7th ruler being Mercury. Another thing is, okay, the same thing with Saturn, I forgot to mention. So if you have like Saturn in the 5th house, for instance, it will aspect the 7th house. So that also shows that you will be drawn to older partners. Yeah, so the same thing with the 10th and the 7th aspects. And last but not least is you want to look at planets in the 5th house, because the 5th house it shows your attitude towards romance. So a person, for instance, who has Saturn in the 5th house is going to be really serious about relationships. So they are more likely to feel comfortable with somebody who's a bit older or more mature versus somebody who has Mercury in the 5th house, for instance, who is clearly going to be drawn to more mercurial, playful types of partners. But the 5th house shows your attitude towards romance and romantic encounters in general, but it doesn't show things like long-term partnerships like marriage. That is ruled by the 7th house. So this is why I kind of listed this last in the list of aspects to consider. And of course, last but not least, you gotta look at the whole chart of a person, because there could be aspects that are not necessarily connected to these houses and planets that show the partner archetype, but they give insight into the kind of person that you are and the kind of life that you want to live and the kind of rhythm you like in your life. So for instance, if you see a person who has a very Saturn-dominated planet, maybe they don't have like Saturn as a Darakaraka or, you know, I don't know, like Saturn in the 7th house. Maybe they don't have any of these placements, but they have Saturn conjunct Moon, Saturn conjunct Sun, things like this, which will show a person that is very driven by material gain and very serious-minded, very workaholic. They're most likely going to appreciate an older person, even though the rest of the chart may not show this. However, this is kind of like, it can go either way. If you want to be 100% sure if a person is attracted to an older partner, you want to look at these points that I have listed. And now, as you can tell, this is probably going to be a really long video. I have used a concrete example. I've taken a concrete example of a real life couple, again, a celebrity couple, because they are the easiest to check. There's no point in me digging out some couple that I know in real life. Namely, Susan Sarandon and Tim Robbins. Now, you may have heard of them, maybe not, I don't know, depending on your age, but you can Google them. And they have been because they're no longer together as far as I heard. However, they had a very long-lasting relationship. They were together for about 21 years, I think. And they are actors, both of them very successful, very well known. They have 2 kids together, although they never really married. They have been together for a very long time. And she is 12 years older than him. So I looked at their charts to see how, if there are any aspects that would show in his chart that he's going to be drawn to older women, and in her chart that she's going to be drawn to younger men. And I found plenty, unsurprisingly. I actually made a list and pointed these things one by one. And I'm going to give you that list right now, how to do like a calculation of points to see if a person is more likely to be attracted to a younger partner, or if a person is more likely to be attracted to an older partner. And I'm going to give you the points list right now. So if you have, and like get your charts ready if you want to analyze this for any chart. So the first thing you want to look at, like I mentioned, is the Darakaraka. If you have in this chart Darakaraka conjunct Mercury, or if the Darakaraka, aka the planet with the lowest degree in the chart, is Mercury, give yourself give the planets 1 point. The score is 1 point. And this is for younger partners. So this is 1 point for younger partners. Preference for younger partners. If the Darakaraka is aspected by Mercury, so opposite Mercury, because that's the only aspect that Mercury can make, give the planet 0.5 points in preference for younger partners. If Darakaraka is in Gemini or Virgo, both of which are ruled by Mercury, give 1 point for younger partners. Same thing with older partners and Saturn, meaning if Darakaraka is Saturn or is conjunct Saturn, give this 1 point preference for older partners. If the Darakaraka is in Capricorn or in Aquarius, give this 1 point for older partner preference. If Darakaraka is aspected by Saturn, meaning Saturn aspects from the third, so either the third aspect, the seventh aspect, or the 10th aspect, give this 0.5 points for older partner preference. So this was the first chapter, the Darakaraka. Second thing that you want to look at in the chart. If this is a man's chart, you want to look at Venus. If Venus is in Virgo or Gemini, give this 1 point preference for younger partner. If Venus is conjunct Mercury, give this also 1 point for younger partner. Let me see. Yeah, also if Venus is aspected by Mercury, meaning if you have Mercury opposite Venus, give this 0.5 preference for younger partner. Now, if you have the same thing with Saturn. So, if you have Venus in Capricorn or Aquarius, give this 1 point preference for an older partner. If you have Venus in conjunct Saturn, give this 1 point preference for an older partner. If you have Saturn aspecting Venus, the 3rd, 7th, or 10th aspect to Venus, then you have 0.5 points preference for an older partner. Same thing with women. If you have, so if this is a woman's chart, right, instead of a man's, look at the Mars or Jupiter placements. So if you have either Mars or Jupiter in Virgo or Gemini, give this a 1 point preference for younger partner. If you have Mars, Jupiter conjunct Mercury, either Mars or Jupiter conjunct Mercury, also 1 point preference for a younger partner. If you have Mercury opposite Mars or Jupiter, also 0.5 preference for a younger partner. If you have the same thing with Saturn now. So if you have Mars or Jupiter in Capricorn or Aquarius, give this 1 point preference for older partner. If you have Mars or Jupiter conjunct Saturn, give this a 1 point preference for an older partner. If you have Mars or Jupiter aspected by Saturn, so the 3rd, the 7th, or the 10th aspects to Mars or Jupiter, give this a 0.5 point preference for an older partner. So this was the second chapter, the Mars / Jupiter and Venus archetypes in the charts. Now the third chapter, if the ruler of the 7th house is Mercury, give this 1 point. So this again, this has nothing to do with gender. So from now on, these points from number 3 onwards you don't have to look at whether it's a woman's or a man's chart. So the third point is if the ruler of the 7th house is Mercury, regardless of gender, you give 1 point for the younger spouse, younger partner preference. If the ruler of the 7th house is Saturn, you give 1 point preference for older spouse. So again, ruler of 7th house being Mercury means the 7th house is either in Gemini or in Virgo. A ruler of the 7th house being Saturn means that the 7th house is either in Capricorn or in Aquarius. This was the 3rd chapter. 4th chapter, if Saturn is in the 7th house, give 1 point preference for older partner. If Mercury is in the 7th house, give 1 point preference for younger partner. 5th chapter, for Mercury in the 1st house, or basically Mercury aspecting the 7th house, give 0.5 preference for younger partner. For Saturn aspecting the 7th house, so either 3rd, 7th, 10th aspects, give 0.5 preference for older spouse or older partner. And now for Saturn in the 5th house, give 0 point, and this is the 6th and the last point that you want to look at. So Saturn in the 5th house gives 0.5 points for older spouse preference. Mercury in the 5th house gives 0.5 points for preference of a younger spouse or younger partner. Now, using this, I have done the calculation for Susan Sarandon and for Tim Robbins. And I'm going to go through that, bear with me. So, Susan Sarandon, I've looked at all of these points from 1 to 6, the ones that I have just explained. And she has the following placements. So she has, first of all, let's look at her preference for younger partners, first of all. So she has Darakaraka being Mercury. Her Darakaraka is Mercury, falls in Libra, and it's conjunct Jupiter and Mars. This is so telling, okay? But let's break it down. Like I mentioned, the list before, right? So, first chapter, she gets 1 point because Darakaraka is Mercury. Remember, 1 point if Darakaraka is Mercury or the Darakaraka is conjunct Mercury. Second chapter, she gets 2 more points because Mars is conjunct Mercury and Jupiter is conjunct Mercury. So she gets 2 points. The rest of them, no more preference for younger partners, right? So I went through all the other chapters one by one, and she got no more points. But she has 3 points total for younger partner preference, right? So then I looked at her score for Saturn, or older partner preference. And the only point she has is for number 4, which is Saturn in the 7th house. So she has Saturn in the 7th house. That means 1 point preference for older partner. And the really interesting thing is that actually her first husband, Chris Sarandon, who is also an actor, was a little bit older than her. And so she has, her total score is 3 points preference for younger partners and 1 point preference for older partners. And so her first husband was older, and then she was with Tim Robbins, who she had children with, a lot of children with, actually most of her children with. I haven't looked at all of her relationships, but Tim Robbins is her most long-lasting relationship, and he is 12 years younger. So the score checks out that she has a preference for younger partners. In Tim Robbins' case, again, I went through all the points that I mentioned before, and he has a 1 point preference for a younger partner, meaning he has Venus in Virgo. So Venus is in a Mercury-ruled sign, which falls into the 2nd chapter that from the list that I mentioned. And so he has that 1 point preference for a younger partner. Then he has 0.5 preference for an older partner because Darakaraka is opposite Saturn. So Darakaraka is aspected by Saturn. Then he has 0.5 points for Venus being aspected by Saturn's 10th aspect. So Venus is aspected by Saturn. Preference for older partner. Then he has 1 point because Saturn rules the 7th house. He has a Leo ascendant, so the 7th house falls in Aquarius. So in total, he has 2 points preference for older partners, 1 point preference for younger partners. And again, Tim Robbins now is actually dating a younger woman, a considerably younger woman, which is unsurprising. But he was, he had children with a woman who was 12 years older than him. So he definitely had that strong preference for older women. Otherwise, he wouldn't have dated one when he was, in his late 20s. So, yeah, I hope this was informative. I mean, it sure was informative for me as well. I mean, obviously, I only looked at one example because already this video is going to be pretty long. But, I mean, you can do this as an exercise and look at other people's charts as well. And like I mentioned before, I mean, this is pretty useful in determining the kind of partner archetype that you are drawn to. And sometimes you see, like in this example, with both of these people, they have, they had like 1 point at least for each of them. So they had like a 1 point preference for Mercury, and then they have 2 points preference for Saturn. But you could have charts where you have like no preference for Mercury and maybe 3 points for Saturn, or you have like no preference for Saturn and you have 4 points for Mercury, and then it's even more clear that that person is going to be drawn to either a younger spouse if it's Mercury, or an older spouse if it's Saturn. And this really helps in understanding people's preferences and why they are drawn to what they are drawn to, okay? So this is it, and I hope you found this useful, and I would love to hear your feedback. Please comment, and please like if you liked it, and if you have like any more suggestions of videos that you are curious about, subjects that you are curious about, please let me know again in the comments. And again, please like and subscribe, and if you're interested in a personal consultation on any subject, please write me an email in the email that I will write in the video description. And that's it, and thank you.